You get intimidated as soon as somebody puts an ology, a logic term on the end. You've bought that idea. This is the propaganda that actually can be used to modify your behavior. So it's no shock to me that we have chronic disease.
Dr. Jack Kruse is a neurosurgeon and health optimization expert
who has challenged mainstream health narratives like Andrew Huberman, Ryan Johnson,
and is here to challenge everything you thought you knew about well-being.
Why is modern health so broken?
Because our modern environment is manufactured. It's no longer native. For example, you have to have light at the right times and dark at the other times. That's the whole key to biologic decentralization.
Crazy. A lot of fighters told me that by not ejaculating, you will actually be able to increase your testosterone.
That was the idea in Indian medicine and Chinese medicine for a long time. Turns out the more times you have orgasms, the better off you are. In fact, the more times the longer you live. If you want to know the truth, it's time for us to have a global revolution against people that don't put the people first. So when you see that they don't have your interest, you have a duty not to help them do anything at all. This is what you tell them.
What exactly is the issue with blue light?
It destroys DHA, it destroys melatonin by liberating vitamin A. Blue light also can affect different genes in your body. For example,
how would I, as somebody who's not scientific, figure out what is actually good for me and what isn't?
It's pretty simple, I think. The first step of fixing this is understanding, and if you don't understand that, then you don't understand.
So, thanks for joining the show, Jack.
No problem.
Let's jump right into it. Why is modern health so broken?
Because our modern environment is manufactured. It's no longer native.
So all the technologies we kind of built around us, you say, are not connected to the natural habitat we actually evolutionary evolved to.
Our genome is not built for the use of the electromagnetic spectrum that we're on. The part of the electromagnetic spectrum that we are designed to work with is pretty simple. It's visible spectrum from 250 to about, I would say, probably 700. We do react up into 3100 for water. But then in the RF range, the only RF radiation that we're designed to work with is 7.83 hertz or harmonics of that, because of the Schumann resonance. And the goal there is that's what tells our brains and our cells where we are in terms of seasons for circadian control. And if you use anything outside of those boundaries, that leads to mitochondrial heteroplasmy and disease. And it's axiomatic. And it turns out everything in modern life is outside of those boundaries. So it's no shock to me why we have chronic disease. So when people talk about Fruit Loops and food and all this, to me, this is superfluous. It's ridiculous to talk about because those are like pimples on an elephant's ass when you look at big picture of things. But this is not, what you've been taught in school. This is not what you were taught in your house. It's not what you've been taught there, because people have a relationship with food, from either the farmer or the grocery store. They don't realize the relationship is actually the relationship of the sun to the earth. That's the first relationship. And if you don't understand that, then you don't understand the problem.
So the most important thing, which is basically governing our health, besides the food, besides anything you say, is light.
Well, it's light and dark. That's the whole key to biologic decentralization. Like, you have to have light at the right times and dark at the other times. It turns out the presence of light, even in those boundaries that I gave you, can be really toxic at nighttime. And unfortunately, in our modern world, that's what, your generation has grown up with. So it's a huge problem. And the issue is people act like we don't know this information. We've known this information for a really long time. I would submit that Robert O. Becker proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then the U.S. military, through DARPA, the Department of Defense, they shelved his work, but that was his public work. What did they do? Then covertly, through the intelligence agencies and also through the Department of Defense and DARPA, they continued his work to prove that. And what do they do now? Because no one has this awareness, now you're able to be controlled very easily because of things, that right now you've grown up with, you think are normal. You just told me you're a filmmaker. When you make a film, you are actually able to control people. When you use a screen, you're able to control people. When you use a cell phone, you're able to control people. In fact, to make this so simple for you to understand, just the fact that you have traffic lights in every city in the world, that is an electromagnetic control signal. When you see a red light, you stop. When you see a green light, you go. But people don't realize that that is just another synonym of how these things happen. Now we're just way more fancy about how we do it.
Yeah. It's kind of like, as you say, for me, growing up, I never even questioned like medicine, health, or anything. It was kind of like I just accepted what the norm was, and then because I'm not a scientist, I don't understand any papers or scientific terms, and so for me, it kind of I always had the issue of finding the truth where it lies, because I feel like you can find. For any bias which you have, which is like, okay, meat is good, but also veganism is good, you can find some scientific studies which basically, confirm that. So how now would I, as somebody who's really not scientific, navigate all of this to figure out what is actually good for me and what isn't?
It's pretty simple, I think. Even though you're not a scientist, you are a scientist. Instead of focusing on what you don't know, how about you focus on what you do know? So, for example, if I took the Garmin chip out of your iPhone, do you think that you would be able to navigate around cities like you do now? The answer is no. So guess what? That's exactly the same thing that happens when the clock in your eye goes awry. So it should be no shock to you why this happens. Now, can you go, very simply and read how Garmin chips work? The answer is yes. Well, it turns out that's exactly how your suprachiasmatic nucleus works. So if you can figure it out in an iPhone, why can't you figure it out in you? It's pretty easy. The science is the same. Okay. The science is exactly the same. The problem is you don't know that. You get intimidated as soon as somebody puts an ology or, a logic term on the end. That's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous idea, but you've bought that idea. See, this is the propaganda that actually can be used to modify your behavior. Again, another tool of control. Like it does not have to just be electromagnetic, but technically propaganda is electromagnetic these days. But I would even submit to you that the original propaganda talked about in Bernays' work in 1921, you had to open a book and read it. Well, you can't read it if there's no reflected light off the page. So technically it's still electromagnetic. And what created the book? Electricity, also electromagnetism. So it's at every level. But the key is, do you see it? Like, for example, when you make a movie, when you have a projector and it goes to a screen, right? You can sit in the movie theater and you see all the light going to the screen. Can you understand the movie by looking at the light? The answer is no. You have to look at the screen. Can you understand the movie by looking at the projector? No. So don't tell me you're not a scientist. Even in your own expertise, if you learn how to think from first principles, this is not difficult to get. If I can teach it to a third grader, I certainly can teach it to a guy like you.
So how would you teach to me? You said the clock in the eye is basically, or light, the circadian rhythm is governing everything. How would you explain to me how it biologically actually works?
It's very simple. Just what I told you. I don't think you listened carefully. You take your iPhone, you take this, you go do a Google search. How does it tell me, where are you right now? What location on Earth?
Mexico City right now.
Okay, so I want to go from Mexico City to the Yucatan Peninsula. So you would put that in Waze or Google Maps or something else. How does that process work? You have a microchip in this computer that connects to a Garmin device that's about 120,000 kilometers above the air. It sends light down to your phone to give the directions. The clock up there has to work 38 microseconds faster to make up for time relativity. Whose law is that? Einstein. You don't have to know that, but that clock's got to work faster than the one in your phone. Otherwise, you're going to wind up in Guatemala, okay? You're not going to wind up in the Yucatan. The clock in your eye has to work faster than every other clock below your body, which is why God or evolution put the clock in your eye to the top of your body. It's also the organ that allows light to come in it for the same reason.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think Jack makes a great point that incorporating small changes in your life, like wearing those or touching grass, can have a huge impact on your life. And personally for me, one of them was actually saving in Bitcoin. And that's why this episode is sponsored by Bitcoin Well. And there's a small cat here, as you can see. Say hello. Yeah, hello. This episode is sponsored by Bitcoin Well, who make it very easy for you to automate your Bitcoin buys and then get them straight into your self-custody. In that way, you can actually make sure that you buy real Bitcoin, because every buy that you make actually also has a transaction ID on the Bitcoin blockchain. And when you sign up via this link down below, you not only help me as a podcaster, but you also get the chance to earn 1 million Satoshis. You get the chance to actually toss the Bitcoin wishing well 3 times, right? Yeah, you want to do this? Oh. And if you're lucky, you are one of the few who can earn 1 million Satoshis straight into your self-custody, into your hardware wallet. And yeah, this was a wild ad read because this small little cat joined me on this one. But it's a wild episode, so we gotta jump right back into it with Jack.
And then, because you mentioned that the artificial light we have today is basically in interrupting this process, which is the natural clock. So you talk a lot about blue light and its problems. What exactly is the issue with blue light?
Well, blue light has a lot of problems. It's not just one problem, but the major problem is that it destroys DHA, it destroys melatonin, and it does that by liberating vitamin A from the chemicals. This is where the science actually matters. Every opsin in your body, which is a non-visual photoreceptor, this means these are photoreceptors that you don't use to see. These photoreceptors have opsin proteins associated. When blue light hits it, the vitamin A is liberated. The vitamin A is toxic to that system, blows it up. Okay. So what makes the clock in your eye run faster? DHA, which is a fat that's found in marine, food chain. It's called fish oil. You have more fish oil from your eye to into your retina and behind your retina than any other part of your brain. Why? Because that's how the clock runs faster. So if you can deliver a higher amount of electric power to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, this clock works faster than that. Now, it doesn't have to be 38 microseconds faster. This is at quantum level time. We're just talking on femto and attoseconds. Okay? These are very, very small parts of time. And because there is that delay, that allows your toes to know how to work with that time delay. And that's the essence of how the system is built. Blue light also can affect different genes in your body. Like, for example, the FGF gene, this is what the government found in MK Ultra. The ultimate stuff that they found out that I talked about in depth, in the Danny Jones podcast. I never got into all the big issues, but I did tell him that it affects the dopamine reward tracks in your frontal lobe. These are the things that allow you to plan and do things. They affect your motion. They affect your mental capabilities, cognition, and also any type of mental illness. These can be hijacked by certain amounts of blue light when it's unopposed by red. It turns out red light actually is the antidote to blue. But all of the screens that are made today, they don't have any red light in them. They've subtracted all that out. It's really noticeable when you look at the spectrum of light bulbs. Light bulbs are the reason that this program is been in place. They give you the excuse in Europe. They give you excuse everywhere else. Oh, we want to save energy, so let's take the UV and the red light out. That's bullshit. This is being done by design because they know how to use optogenetics in the system to control you. They control the way you think. And soon, through the new program that they're using, which is through vaccination, they're going to put technology inside your body that's going to mimic what an iPhone does. So you'll be controlled from above, down below, and they'll be able to send frequencies down so that if they don't like the movie that you're making with Jack Dorsey, they're going to just turn a little knob on. They're going to find out you're in Mexico City because they'll find it from the Google geolocator, and they will send out a precision beam and make you ineffective. Very similar to what you saw happen in Havana when the Russians were able to affect all the Americans in the embassy. That's the games that are going on, my friend. This is what it's all about.
Crazy. Yeah, one thing.
It's not crazy when you see. This is what bothers me when people interview me. How can you say it's crazy when you know that's exactly how your phone works?
It's not just that's true.
It's not crazy. What's crazy is that you don't realize that it's obvious, and that's what they bank on. That's what they bank on. They bank on that you say it crazy. But guess what? You have the experience right now in your life. You can't do shit without your phone.
Yeah.
Guess what? When I grew up, I never had a phone. I lived my life perfectly fine without a phone. But your generation believes this has become your generation's heroin.
Yeah, that's true. Do you think there is any solution to this, or can normal people shield themselves from that?
Well, I told you there's the first step of fixing this is understanding there's a problem. I mean, look at yourself right now. You're like, oh, this is crazy. I have to have you stop telling me it's crazy. It can't be crazy a conspiracy theory when there's patents for it. Okay? No, that's not true. Then you know who's crazy? You're fucking crazy for not realizing. Then once you realize it's there, then you have to do everything you can to use technology wisely. You use it when you need it and you turn it off when you don't. You know, that you have it safe in the wall for your valuables, but that other safe is a Faraday cage. When you don't need it and you're going to have a date with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you put your phones away so Google and the government can't hear what you're doing, so that they can't target you. That's it. But know that they're doing that. If the government wants to listen to you and control you, and you stay ignorant that they have this ability, then that's on you. You're a dumbass. So you need to prepare for it. And should you let anything go in your body that could put technology in you to make you an antenna? The answer is no. So like when you have surgery, make sure you don't have elective surgery. You know, when you eat food, try to make sure the food is organic, grown by a farmer, not bought at a supermarket. Okay? Make sure it's not Fruit Loops, that it doesn't have self-replicating messenger RNA technology in it, because that's coming. And the other big problem that people don't realize, this is the reason why they geoengineer the sky, because all the bad stuff that they want to put in you, all the chemicals that are in the air, when you breathe them in through your lungs, some of that gets put in there. How do you get rid of that problem? You make sure that you're in the sun all the time. So a lot of people, you know, always get mad at me when they see I do a podcast. I never have a shirt on. I'm always outside. Today, I'm not even in the good sun that I usually do my podcast in, because we have some people over here right now visiting. And so I just said, we'll set everything up here and deal with it from there. But if you have enough melanin, both on your integument and on your insides, that actually acts to take any of the technology that they put in you away. But most people don't realize this is even a possibility. So then I have to get them to go on my Twitter feed and look. Like, you go on my Twitter feed today, you will see slides with patents that show that all this stuff works. This is not like Star Wars, like that it doesn't work. They have this capability. Well, who's the they? Governments all over the world. Certain governments have more of it than others, okay? But if your country says that you're free, I can promise you you're not free. Freedom is also a relative term, just like the truth is. The truth is an approximation of the data we have today. I would tell you your freedom is exactly the same way. It's an approximation of what you believe to do, but you have to realize as a human that you shouldn't trust anybody. And I don't. I just did another podcast with Danny a couple of days ago. And one of the guys that I did the podcast with, this guy named Callie Means, who I don't trust at all. He goes, why don't you trust me? I said, I don't trust anybody. I grew up in New York City. I hate everybody equally. And then I decide who I like and who I don't like.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or not. They don't care. They have the ability to do these things. So you need to know this isn't crazy. You need to know that they have the capability. Therefore, you need to plan your life appropriately. So there's things you can do.
Yeah, there are people who are trying to build technologies. For example, that's what Jack is focusing on right now as well too. He sees the problems with, for example, centralized platforms, how they can control human beings and actually everything you talked about. And now he's trying by integrating Bitcoin and Nostr to basically give humans the possibility to break away from all of those issues and hopefully like fight against all of those forces.
Yeah, I mean, I like his plan. I think the plan, however, very simplistic. I actually think that the plan where he should be spending his resources is in different places. I've got my own ideas about that. I don't really talk about them publicly at all. But I do talk to my people about it. Things that they need to be doing, things that they should be planning for in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I mean, I famously told people, you know, when you met me at the Bitcoin adopting conference about how I came to Bitcoin and why I came, because I knew that was going to be important in the battle to decentralize medicine. In fact, today's an interesting day. Today is the day, the anniversary of when I got my first Bitcoin in 2013 because of Jack Dorsey, December 6th.
That's great. And we just hit 100K. Great.
So realize that Bitcoin, like Nostr, is the story for like now and maybe the next 5 or 6 years. But if you think that they don't have other plans for us, that they're going to be able to somehow break, how shall I say, Satoshi's brilliance, you're crazy. Or I would say naive. So do you need to be paying attention to those capabilities? I think so.
Do you think with with the latest presidential election and Robbie Kennedy, for example, getting the lead in the Department of Health, that there is at least a positive force, or is it still that we need to take self-responsibility and totally shield ourselves?
I think 99% of people feel that it's a good thing. I'm in the camp that's 1%. I told you, even though I like Bobby, I don't trust anybody. And do I have trust? No. He's already sitting down and meeting with executives with Trump from Big Pharma. He shouldn't meet with any of them. He already knows who they are. He knows what he needs to do. Now, if he wants to be cordial and nice, great. But what he should have done after he met with them, he should have had a press conference, told the world why he was meeting them. Be transparent. But that's not what we got. We just heard through the news that he met with the big pharma companies. And it's obvious why they want to meet with him. What are you going to do to us? Well, Trump's not going to let him do too much. Why? Because he's very proud of being Mr. President Operation Warp Speed. And I just told you that Warp Speed is tied to this bioweapons program. And most of the people that got Trump elected, they like that program. In fact, most of his picks are still linked to that program. A lot of the people that's around him are linked to that program. So while I would tell you Uncle Jack is optimistic, because I do think Trump and his platform is way better than Kamala Harris, no question about it. Do I trust anybody in Washington, D.C. right now? No. I have less trust in those people than any person that you'll ever talk to, including Jack Dorsey, because I know what they're capable of doing.
Yeah. So you what would you do if you would be in Bobby's position to kind of make America healthy again?
I would do everything I possibly could to get confirmed. I would tell Trump I would do this, that, and the other thing, and then I would unleash my own program. I would make him fire me. Why? Because then the American people would know that he's truly working for us, we the people, and not for the industrial military complex. And the other big problem I have with Bobby thinks the law is great. The law isn't great. And it was proved in his candidacy. They used lawfare to ruin him and Nicole. So if you can use law to do nefarious things, then you shouldn't use the law to try to fight against the most evil, corrupt people on the planet. This is where I think Jack Dorsey is absolutely correct. This is where I think Bitcoin maxis are correct, that the best, most just thing in the world that we have now, the tool that fixes everything is Bitcoin. Why? Because it's truly decentralized. If you want to fix the big problems that make us ill, which is the bankers and big pharma, I already told you that the use of the electromagnetic spectrum is where all the chronic diseases come from. That means you have to disintermediate the central bank, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and you really have to disintermediate all their friends that control big pharma and everything below that. The only thing that does that is Bitcoin. Now, to give Bobby and Trump some credit, they're the only two leaders in the world outside of Bukele that are now saying that we would like to bring Bitcoin into the fold. I would tell you that's the most redeeming quality. That's the most trustworthy part that I have about Trump and Bobby. It's not about HS. And I know people will be surprised to hear that from me, but I just told you I went to Danny's podcast to do another one with Callie Means and a doctor named Mary Talley Bowden. I actually said that in that podcast too. And everybody in the room was stunned when I said it. They're like, well, I thought that you had Bobby's ear. I thought you had Nicole's ear. I said, just because you have someone's ear doesn't mean they're going to do what they need to do. You know, if you go back and listen to Bukele's speech at CPAC, what did he say? He said, doesn't matter who the next president's going to be. It depends how good the diagnosis is of the problem and what they do. You know, I always like to point out to people, what did Bukele do when he got elected? Everybody told him he couldn't do what he did. First thing he did is he made Bitcoin legal tender. And look at where we are now, December 6th. You may not know this, my friend, but December 6th, the entire bond structure of El Salvador on Wall Street has been upgraded. This is a place where nobody wanted to come for 5 years, right? You were here a couple of weeks ago. You saw the country for yourself. This is the greatest turnaround ever. And what do we hear from Bobby and Trump. Oh, well, the United States is so big, we can't change it. Well, Bukele changed his place, small, but in 5 years. Now we have a guy that runs a G8 country named Malay, who literally in 6 months is changing his country. What is he doing? It's getting rid of all the bullshit, all the corruption. Now, he hasn't gone the way that Bukele is gone, but he's taking away 100 years of communism with a chainsaw and shrinking the government down. I'd like to see him make Bitcoin legal tender like Bukele did, but I had his central banker in my house literally 6 months ago, and I gave that direct message to the central banker. And he's a guy who's a Wall Street veteran, worked on Wall Street for 35 years. His son actually works for Tether. And it's so funny to see two men in the same family. One is fiat, the other one is, a Bitcoin player. And to see that they're totally on different ends of the spectrum, but not for the same reasons. They are actually linked through FIDM. They're interested in fixing Argentina. But I can tell you, the reason I bring this up is when people tell me things can't be done. It's kind of like why I scolded you before about, well, I'm not a scientist. That's bullshit. That is a bullshit excuse. Why? We have examples now of two leaders in the Western world that have come in and made radical changes in their country, and changes happened in a big way. Like I just found out when I was flying back from Florida that the same thing is now going on in France. They just got a no vote, and Macron is out, or not out, but the prime minister's out. They have a big problem. Well, this is good. France has a structure where the people can get rid of people, but you can't get rid of the president. The president's the problem. So guess what? I think it's time for a revolution. That's what I think. If you want to know the truth, I think for people to really protect themselves from the question you asked me, it's time for us to have a global revolution against people that don't put the people first. So when you see that they don't have your interest, you have a duty not to help them do anything at all.
Yeah.
This is what you tell them. Ethos. Okay. Yeah. I have no interest in helping the government out at all.
Yeah. And actually with Bukele, you are actually helping to decentralize the health system there, right? So it's kind of like trying to decouple it.
Right. But I gave him that information a long time ago, and it's been slow to come. So every day it takes longer, my trust goes down. Oh, okay. Remember, everybody I treat everybody the same, my friend. I give you my best ideas and you don't execute, then you told me how you value my opinion, right? So I have a duty to do the same to you. Like if you don't think that this is the way it should be going, that's great. Then don't ask for my help. Like when you want to dance with a woman, she doesn't move her feet. Are you going to dance with her very long? No.
Nope.
Remember what I tell you. This is a very simple exercise that we're having here. Like if it wasn't for Jack Dorsey, I'd probably never get into Bitcoin. And he told me, he goes, you need to decentralize your life. He goes, if you want to recapture your power that you have in centralized medicine, he says, decentralize your practice. First thing you need to do is understand Bitcoin. So guess what I did? I did that. And the sad part is I didn't do it as soon as he told me I should start thinking about it because I thought he was crazy.
Okay.
But that shows you how crazy I am, that a guy who has got probably $18-19 billion now, I don't have that because I wasn't as smart as him. So what am I telling you? Jack Dorsey clearly was smarter than I was as a brain surgeon. Why? Because he saw the future developing. He understood the problem better than me. But what did he do since he's my friend? He told me, and it took me a while to listen. Now, the difference with me is I'm a great white shark, dude. Once I bite into it, I don't let it go. But do I know what they tried to do to him? Yeah. I know what they try to do to him. They try to do the same thing to me. The difference is I've already lived 60 years of my life. Jack's still a young man. He still has a lot of things to do. But I like stirring the mix up. I like being Asian provocateur. I like giving two fucks. I like coming on podcasts and telling people the truth. Why? Because the truth is a revolutionary thing when you live in a world of lies. And the world of lies is built around this tech platform. It's built around all the non-native EMF. Your generation, you're a young man, you think the tech is great. The interesting thing is the conversation you should have with Jack, because he's a little bit older than you, he's now learned that technology has a nefarious side. He knows that. Why? Because it made him sick. That's the reason why him and I became friends. That's the reason why he uses a lot of my stuff. Now, like what he did for me with Bitcoin, I did for him in his own life. And, I famously told him a long time ago that, yeah, you may have got me more monetary wealth by doing this, but I gave you time back. Time is the most valuable asset you get. And if you listen to what I said at Adopting Bitcoin, I made the case that that is the truth. That is an axiomatic truth, because without time, then you become Steve Jobs, you become Paul Allen, you become Hal Finney. Yeah, famous guys with billions of dollars, but you're dead. What good are you dead? I don't want to see Jack dead. I want to see Jack continue to do the things all around the world, to keep sticking his finger in the government's eye, to keep telling the people, wake up, put Windex on their glass eye.
Yeah. So with like technology, should we like get it from our kids completely away? Because I guess that when you're
how the brain works, the brain is very sensitive to electromagnetic radiation because it's not myelinated. It takes 25 to 28 years to happen. So my answer is yes. Do I think there should be a law that technology should be limited very, very aggressively till the 21st birthday? Yes, I believe so. Okay. Do I believe schools should go back to books? Yes. Do I believe the use of technology, computers, iPads, phones? I think it should be illegal for anybody below 21 years old to buy technology.
Oh, wow. Makes sense.
That's what I believe. Yeah. But am I okay if they use it because their parents come up with a program? Yeah. I mean, you have to realize some parents let their kids drink liquor. Like if you're in France, it's normal to have a glass of red wine with your family, at 6 to 8 years old. That's not normal in the United States. But do I think the rule for technology should be everywhere? Yeah. But, I know that everybody in the world is not going to follow those rules. I think when they understand the biology behind it, then maybe parents will stop using iPads and iPhones as digital babysitters, because basically what they're doing is they're making their kids mentally retarded by doing that. And I mean that literally and figuratively. You are dumbing children down by doing that. And if you want the world to be filled with a bunch of idiots, that's not the world that I want, my friend. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think you want that world either, because as a movie maker, do you think idiots are going to want to come see a movie where you actually have to think about what you're putting on the screen? But guess who does want that? Apple, Microsoft. They just want you so dumb so that you keep hitting the button, like, and you go to Amazon and buy what you have to buy. That's what the whole game is about, my friend. It's just like a casino. The casino doesn't give two shits about you as long as you keep spending money.
Yeah, attention. Yeah, they want to manipulate my dopamine to keep me on there because the advertisement model and
correct. It's obvious, but what's not obvious is when I point this out, people are like, "Oh yeah, he's right," and they go right back to the heroin.
Yep. How is your relationship then with social media or your phone? How do you try to
it's not been good lately. Why? Because I've come out of my shell the last 18 months. I'm not a political guy, but I became political, unfortunately, when one of Jack Dorsey's friends called me up and said, "Look, I would like you to come on my podcast and try to teach this guy from the Stanford Research Institute a little bit about light, because I think he's missing a lot." Mm-hmm. And I realized what that meant. I'm not so sure he did, but I didn't answer him for 6 weeks because I knew if I came out and I started to talk about this, that I was going to put a target back on my back. And boy, was I right. Because in the last 18 months, that podcast opened up Pandora's box. Mm-hmm. Now you see it's led me to talk to politicians all over the world, to make a constitutional amendment for El Salvador, for me to get really popular talking about what you're talking to me about now. People are very, very interested in the neurosurgeon. 20 years ago, I was only a problem for centralized medicine. Now I'm a problem for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing because I think the message you spread is something the world needs to hear to actually figure out, okay, like I said, when I first discovered your message and I dove down this rabbit hole and was like, oh, I need to relearn everything which I thought is correct. And I'm like keeping learning more every day. And so I think it's very like we all can be thankful for you to actually put out this message, although it might put a target onto your back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be okay with the target on my back if you guys do something with it. Yeah. My big thing is it's great to have a good idea, but you need people to execute on the idea. Otherwise, it gets deleted. And the truth is, I'm on the shoulders of other scientists that have also been canceled. I understand what happened to Bernice Eddy. I understand what happened to Robert O. Becker. those are the people that I have a reverence for because it happened to them and I know that it can happen to me. The difference is that I'm already at the end of my career. I don't need to do neurosurgery anymore, predominantly because of Jack Dorsey teaching me about Bitcoin. So I don't have to go in the rat race and do spinal fusions like a lot of neurosurgeons have to do, to pay their bills, to pay for all the ex-wives, to pay for all the kids, to pay for all their habits. I don't have to do that anymore. In fact, I've made my life more simple. Everything for me now is about nature. I am perfectly happy, sitting around in the sun and cultivating and learning about nature every day. And then telling guys like you how the story should unfold and how I do things. It doesn't mean I want you to do what I do. I just want you to understand that the first 40 years of my life, I did everything wrong. Yeah. And then had a wake-up call. I think if you ask Jack the same thing, probably up until maybe 8 or 10 years ago when he got sick from what he did, he built amazing technology. I mean, we have Twitter because of him. We have Block. He's got a Bitcoin-only company. But there was a time in his life that made him sick, and he sought me out, and he goes, look, same story with Rick, Rick Rubin. So the thing that makes me happy is that I could help two guys like Jack and Rick, and then they in turn make a lot of other people happy from the things that they do. To me, that's how I think society should operate. Just like, when you make a movie about Jack or you make a movie about this topic, that you're actually educating people about, hey, maybe we need to have a different relationship than we do now. That's an idea worth spreading. And the thing is, I'm not anti-tech, just like I'm not anti-vax. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And the thing is that we should be able to have that discussion publicly without being censored. Right now, I mean, you were adopting Bitcoin. I was on the stage and Sergey Brin turns off the internet during my talk. Okay, so the guys for Simply Bitcoin had to recapitulate everything. This is what I'm talking about. So if you don't think that these guys are bad actors, this is the proof. You experienced it with me. Yeah, it happened. The only people they wanted to hear my message was the people that were in that meeting hall. Now, thankfully, the people on the ground, they went the extra method, and now it's out on the internet so people can hear what I said. They can hear the story. Just like people will be surprised at what I'm saying now about the politicians, even the elections there. It's not crazy for me to say I'm happy that Trump won. I'm happy that Bobby's doing what he's doing, but I don't trust either one of them if they're going to do what they told us they're going to do in the campaign. Why? Because what do politicians do? They tell you one thing and they very rarely do it. So remember what I said to you before. Ideation without execution leads to deletion of a very good idea. I need these fuckers to execute. If they don't execute, I promise you, I'm going to be as big a problem for them as I am for everybody else in centralized medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about actions. You don't trust the words, but look at the actions, because this is how you actually see what kind of person is really there. Because with words, you can tell whatever, but actions are the reflections of what you actually believe. Yeah.
Correct. And that's part of the reason why, when people give me shit about Dorsey, I was like, look, the guy is Bitcoin only. He doesn't do any shit coins at all. He got out of Twitter because Twitter was not serving him. It was not the company that he built. The board did everything possible to make his life miserable. And then the board doesn't go to Congress. They called Jack to go to Congress. He goes, well, what do you want me to do? And then, I don't think anybody realized from 2016 to 2021, he's being threatened by Hollywood and the government. And that's why the last Jason Bourne movie is made. It was a direct threat to him and Zuckerberg. Either play ball with us or we're going to take you out. Well, I mean, when somebody tells you that and you're a billionaire, fuck it, sell Twitter. Go work on Nostr. Go work in Nigeria. Go work in Africa. Go work in Central America. And you know what? Teach more people to be decentralized. When I sat down with Jack, the last time I was physically with him, I said, tell me what you need me to do. You know what he said? Decentralize the world. He goes, decentralize everybody that you come in contact with. He goes, that's all I ask you to do. I'm like, hold my beer. I'm ready. That's it. And I feel the same way about people in medicine, patients that I deal with. If I can teach them even one aspect of decentralization in their life, then I feel like it's been a success.
How can we listening to that help to make the world a more decentralized way? How can we help?
Your own life. Take something in your own life. Think about something that you are expert in, and then think about
like I try to do my movies, for example, like decentralized, where I use a lot of Nostr, like because I know I post mostly on Nostr. All my like people who follow me is basically on Nostr, and I try to invest so much more time into building Nostr than being on Twitter and all the other platforms. So this is kind of for me where I say I can create content. I can use what we talk about.
I'll give you an example. When you do that, I want you to take the example of World War II. When the British people would take propaganda and fly over Germany and put things down there and say, look, come join us. We're not Hitler. This, that, and the other thing. Do the same thing with your movies. Drop your movie and put it right on X. Say, look, this is what we're doing. In other words, educate the sleeping. That's kind of what I do. I mean, if you want to know the truth, that's what I use Twitter for. For me, Nostr is really not prime time yet because of the work that I do. And I've told Jack that already. I'm glad that, he's trying to get it right. So what do? I keep trying to educate the idiots that are on Twitter, the people that are on Facebook, the people on LinkedIn. These platforms are, the way I look at it, it's Chernobyl. But do I know that there's still some good people on there that need help? Yeah. So you help those people. But I'm not under the illusion that I can help everybody. That's why I always tell people I'm looking for savages. Those are the people that I look to help. Those are the people that eventually will wind up on Nostr. Those will be the people that create major problems for the government in the future. That's my tribe. I like that.
Which messages do you think resonate most with the savages? How are you able to get the right people?
Freedom maximalists, people who love sovereignty, people who like property laws, people who believe that they should be able to say whatever they want anytime they want. We should have freedom in our movement. And remember, the government works for us, not the other way around. But that's changed in the last 120 years. And it's changed everywhere, not just, in Europe, Africa, but really in the United States. In fact, I think it's most noticeable in the United States. Why? Because the United States, prior to probably World War I, was truly a reflection of its founding documents. Since the Federal Reserve Act, that's been completely taken to the woodshed. Any American who thinks they're free is clueless. But do they have more relative freedom than, say, somebody in Nigeria or, say, someone in South America or someone in Mexico? Absolutely. I would never argue that. But just like time is relative, so is freedom. And we need to build things actively, which is, what Jack is doing, what you're doing. So we need to support people who do that. Just like I'm trying to build decentralized medicine. Why? Because I think that's going to be important for your future, for Jack's future, for the future of the savages. Each one of us has a tool that we're good at. Like your tool is making movies. My tool is trying to heal people from the chronic disease epidemic. Where I think the disease epidemic is coming from is radically different than centralized medicine. Radically different than the people around Bobby Kennedy now. They want to tell you it's Fruit Loops and food and red dye number 4. It's important, but it's like 17th on the list. It's the electromagnetic spectrum that's number 1, and it's not even close. That's the truth.
Okay.
So we all know how important it is to take care of our health. Eating right, sleeping right, and making sure that our mental health is in check. But have you ever thought about the health of your financial setup? Keeping your Bitcoin on an exchange is basically like eating fast food every day. It might seem convenient, but the long-term effects can be tremendously bad. Exchanges get hacked, can freeze your funds, or sometimes even go bankrupt. And that's not the ideal way to save your hard-earned Bitcoin. That's why Bitbox, the sponsor of this podcast, created a solution to help you to safely store your Bitcoin. Their Bitbox 2.0 hardware wallet is kind of the Whole Foods of Bitcoin security. It helps you to take control of your Bitcoin with a setup that is as healthy as a workout is for your body. It is designed to be stress-free for you. It has a simple setup, it is easy to use and secure from the inside out. It kind of protects your Bitcoin like a strong immune system. Your private keys never leave the device, and the Bitbox is fully transparent and open source. It is Swiss made, and therefore you can verify everything you want yourself. If I were you and all of your Bitcoin is still on an exchange, you gotta get it off there as soon as possible, and Bitbox helps you to do so. So go to bitbox.swiss and buy your hardware wallet. So make sure to keep your Bitcoin healthy. And now we're going to jump back into the episode.
What like you said that the technology basically made your patients sick. What are the symptoms which they have?
You name it. Everybody gets different symptoms. Like, for example, let's talk about some of the new diseases that have occurred in the last 120 years. First new disease, Alzheimer's disease. It was the first paper written 1911. Autism, unheard of until 1940. Fibromyalgia, unheard of until the 70s. How about Lyme disease? Also unheard of. These are all new diseases. How about autoimmune conditions? They make up 4% of the world's problem. Prior to the electric power grid, they were unheard of. In fact, if you look at obesity, which is a lot what people are doing like right now in the United States, they want to blame the food. And when food politics became a big deal in the United States, like when we moved from the European model of small farms to supermarkets, this happened in the United States in the 50s and 60s. And then Nixon and McGovern changed all the food laws in the 70s to make food cheap. They did it by putting shit in the food. The NHANES data, if you look at it, goes all the way back to 1893 with Tesla's power grid. People in America started getting fat then, not in the 1970s. But why does everybody focus on the 1970s? Because this is something they understand. Just like you said before, okay. I don't understand how light could get me sick. Mm-hmm. But then when you start to look into it, you're like, but I do understand how my cell phone could put me in Guatemala if the timing is off. And then you're like, yeah, I did learn about a clock in the eye. And all of a sudden, and it turns out that clock in the eye controls all the engines of my body. Okay, maybe now this begins to make some sense. It's not the simple little smooth brain idea that the food gurus and centralized medicine do, because when you believe their bullshit, then there's a pill for every ill. That's the reason why Big Pharma, that's the reason why the Rockefellers changed the game with the Flexner Report in 1911. Ironically, the same year. And this was literally 20 years after the AC power grid is discovered. That's the crux of the story. You know, and I'm okay if people want to focus in on food, but I'm that guy that tells you, where does all the food come from? It comes from the relationship of the earth and the sun. And if the food is made inside a laboratory with fake light, it shouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that Fruit Loops are no good for you. Of course they're not. You know, and the difference that people don't understand, you have a choice when you go to the supermarket not to buy Fruit Loops, but you don't have a choice when you get stuck with a vaccine because it's mandated for you to travel or it's mandated for you to work. That's not cool. And you don't have a choice either to buy a screen on a computer that's not blue lit until I helped a guy named Anjan Kata build or bring to market the Daylight computer. Daylight computer is the first computer in the world that doesn't have a blue lit screen. And who tried to block that for 10 years? Sergey Brin, our friend from Google. Why? Because he owns the patents for blue light with Zuckerberg. This is why Silicon Valley fought him. And this is why Nicole Shanahan gave Anjan Kata money to bring this to market so that savages like you could use this type of computer.
Yeah.
Zach has actually seen that computer. Anjan has gone down with Tristan to see that computer. Everybody in the world, like you want to change the world, everybody who listens to this should go buy that damn computer, whether you like it or not. Why? Because what is it? It's like Bitcoin. It tells Silicon Valley, fuck you. That's what it tells you, that we need to have choices in computer screens. The fact that they're all blue lit, we know blue light's a problem. To me, this is crazy talk. It's just like when Biden and Obama got rid of the incandescent bulb. That's bullshit. We should have a choice. If we want to buy incandescent bulbs and waste electricity, let us. That's decentralization.
Yeah. How effective are like blue light disrespecters like those when I have like a normal screen?
If you want to know the truth, it's effective, but not as effective as having better technology. Like if we had screens that were better, we wouldn't have to worry about this. Like not only do we have to control the frequency, but we have to control the lux. And it turns out there's a lot of papers out recently that show the lux is a bigger problem for the SCN. You need much brighter light for the supracosmatic nucleus, but it turns out the Hiller nucleus doesn't need the lux that the other one does. So that means even low blue light computer screens are a problem for mental illness. But see, that message isn't getting to the psychiatrist. Why? Because all the psychiatrists are centralized. Who do they work for? Big Pharma. That's the most centralized part of medicine. You know, psychiatrists don't talk to you anymore. They just write prescriptions. That's all they do.
They give you drugs, right?
Yeah, well, I've taken shits that are worth more than psychiatrists, and I felt that way even when I was centralized myself. I thought most of what they did was bullshit when I was in medical school. And I actually really feel that way now. I put the psychiatrists, pediatricians, dermatologists, and ophthalmologists, they are the biggest worthless part of centralized medicine. They're the people that I would flush. Like if I was on the Doge committee with Vivek and Elon, I would make it illegal to practice those 4 specialties the way it is now. I would completely take some of their tools in their toolbox away. I would absolutely reschool them. I would also ban sunscreen and sunglasses the first day I came in, because this is one of the biggest problems. And people don't understand. When they hear this, they go, but Jack, you're decentralized. You said everything should be available. Like, I'm okay with it being available. I just don't want you to buy it. Like, I want girls to put the sunglasses on the top of their head or in between their boobs. It looks great there for pictures. Just don't put it on your eye. If you want to sell sunglasses, sell the glasses that you have on your face. That I'm okay with.
Yeah. How bad are sunglasses? How much do they disrupt your circadian rhythm and like this clock in the eye?
I'll make it very simple. Sunglasses are an oncologist's best friend. It's a growth machine for oncology practice. How's that?
So sunglasses slowly kill you?
No, well, sometimes not slowly at all. Sometimes pretty quick, especially if you took the jab.
Regarding vaccines in general, are there can you say all vaccines are bad per se, or is there?
I can, but nobody else wants to hear it. But I think they're all useless. I think they're based on faulty science.
Okay.
And that's the reason they have no controls. It's all by design. And I think centralized doctors, the biggest lie is not statins, it's not cholesterol, it's actually vaccines. I personally think they're all useless. And I didn't have that belief my whole life. I used to believe in the camp that vaccines were a wonder drug like penicillin was from Alexander Fleming. But then over my career, I started to notice some very interesting things. And then I went back and looked at the papers. Like, for example, when Andy Wakefield got canceled by the British centralized doctors, I thought it was interesting what he was saying, that the MMR vaccine had a lot of problems. So I decided to look into the MMR vaccine. And as I told you before, the most valuable asset we have is time. So the first thing I did is I went back and looked at the tables of when the MMR vaccine and what the incidence of measles was and when vaccination came in. The vaccination program came in after measles was already rare. So why the hell did we make a vaccine for a disease that wasn't a problem? Same thing was true in polio. And the polio idea is what really opened my mind to this, because I learned about that when I was a young resident. And I kind of laid that whole case out in the Danny Jones podcast. And when I realized that there was a big farce behind polio, that not only was some of the people who we think were taught in our history books had polio. I'll give you an example. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. Many people sold the idea that he had polio. I'm not convinced that he had polio anymore. I think he may have had an autoimmune condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome for a variety of different reasons. And do I think polio, as it was sold through the March of Dimes, FDR, and the industrial military complex through Salk, did we really need a polio vaccine? No, I think the government needed this program and Big Pharma needed the program. It started out really the Rockefellers needed it. And this idea, I believe, came from World War I from A.G. Farben when they started to make nitrogen mustard gas and they started to make all these other chemicals. And then Rockefeller started to look for uses for these chemicals. And then things were done in different parts of the world where use chemicals were dumped into the environment, and they found out that it was a very effective way to control populations. So I'll give you an example. If you look at the stories of the first, I would say, genocide linked to the Balfour Declaration, they were poisoning wells with chemicals, where they didn't want certain people at. That idea has been magnified throughout the 20th century. I'd say the big year, like the crazy part for me is most Bitcoiners think everything is 1971. I wish most of them would take their head out of their ass and realize that 1911 is really the year they need to look at. And then if they look at some of the Nobel Prizes that were given for the early vaccination idea, this was done by a French physician where we got the word anaphylaxis. What did actually he show? anytime we inject a young child with anything, they become hypersensitive to this issue. That's actually where most of the side effects for vaccines come from. Why? Because you're fine tuning, the immune system to react against this. So when pediatricians ask me, why do all these kids have food allergies and peanut allergies now? It's because we've been vaccinating them like crazy this whole time. It goes back to that original Nobel Prize, that nobody wants to talk about. Why? Because how you get taught this in medical school is actually built on a curriculum that Big Pharma pays for and gives to the medical school for free. Where'd that idea come from? Rockefeller and the Flexner Report. So it's almost like Project Mockingbird, except the medicine version. Let's get the media to lie to you so you believe all the bullshit. Well, Project Mockingbird in American medicine and really Western medicine it starts with the Flexner Report. And what did the Flexner Report fundamentally do? It took vitalism away and brought in the idea of there's a pill for every ill. And those pills were the pills that all the companies that were broken up from Standard Oil, most of them still today to this day in New Jersey. Why? Because that's where Rockefeller decided to use his waste chemicals. And we see that story recapitulate, in Nazi Germany. We find out that a lot of the people that were linked to the Rothschilds and Rockefellers in the banking side, that's what Dr. Kurt Plotner in MK Ultra, who's found by Meyer Lansky on the docks in New York, that's what he told them. He goes, yeah, for some reason, we're getting Rockefeller's chemicals and BASF's fluoride, and we're giving it to the people in these concentration camps that were trying to move to Palestine. There was no mention that these people were giving it to them to try to kill them. They were actually doing it to make them more docile, to move them. And then certain crazy things started to happen in the concentration camps where people started to get communicable diseases. Why? Because when you put a group of people that are dissimilar from all over Europe, they started getting typhoid fever, typhus, and everything else. And it created a huge problem. So when you see this develop, you begin to see that the ideas of how Big Pharma works today actually was born in probably the first 30 years after the Balfour Declaration, the Flexner Report, and the Federal Reserve has changed. And if you see the common tie there, the common tie is the bankers. Okay, that's the common tie. Then who sits right below that Cantillon effect is Big Pharma. And that's the reason why these companies are so profitable. But it's also the reason why, as the United States government gets built out after World War II, where the industrial military complex becomes important, that a link is made between the bankers, the Big Pharma, and the industrial military complex. And then what happens? They take those three businesses, amalgamate them together, and it becomes global scale. So when you're European, when the United States gets sick, everybody else gets sick. Why? Because we are sending all these bad ideas everywhere. That's actually what Project Mockingbird was originally about. If you can control the media, you can control the narrative, you can control what people believe. And it really, most people think this started with the media, and war actually started with the Rockefellers, the Flexner Report, and healthcare. And it's still going on to this very day. I would tell you everything in a medical school curriculum, my opinion, is centralized horseshit.
Okay. So we Bitcoiners, we talk about the gold standard and then the fiat standard, and we kind of see onto this gold standard as being like the ideal. Could you say that before 1911, then there was like a gold standard of medicine?
I wouldn't say there was a gold standard. You know what I think it was like? It was the Wild West of both centralization and decentralization mixed. And nobody had a Library of Alexandria to tell the public what was good or bad. That's why we had barber surgeons. Like, people at one time thought it was a good idea to bleed people out. We now know that's kind of crazy talk, but back then we didn't know that. And at this time, there was a lot of really cool work being done initially by like a guy named Dr. Alvin Burr in Yale, where he found that all plants have DC electric current. That's like vitalism. That work was kind of taken to the woodshed in this transition. Why? Because anything that was based on energy medicine, like light energy, Rife machines, the use of sunlight to get people better. Like, people forget this. Finson won the Nobel Prize in 1901. So this is before 1911 for the use of UV light in treating tuberculosis and pemphigus vulgaris. This is a bad infectious disease. Do you know to this very day that when you have drug-resistant TB, the single best thing that still works is sunlight with UV light, even today? But people, when I talk to doctors, they don't even know that UV light was given a Nobel Prize before any drug was. It's shocking, when I say this stuff to people, because like a young man like you have grown up in a world where, oh, no, penicillin, this and that, these are the greatest things ever. And then I casually point out to people, well, everybody seems to know about this polio thing, but they don't know why Jonas Salk and Alfred Sabin didn't get a Nobel Prize for that. Why? Because it harmed a lot of people because it was tainted with SV40. Okay? Mm-hmm. And that's the interesting thing. And, everybody knows about Alexander Fleming and penicillin, but penicillin hardly works for anything at all. Why? Because we overuse it and abuse it because we don't understand the decentralized nature of man. And that is the key. And this is the reason why we have so many different things wrong, because once the paradigm was stolen from us to centralize medications and centralize our ideas, all the things that are found in nature were lost to us. All the people that were interested in vitalism. And then, magically in the 1970s and 1980s, we have a guy come along named Doug Wallace who finds out that everything in us basically runs on an electric power grid made by mitochondria. There's a 30 million volt current made inside by a mitochondria that works with sunlight and water. It's the same story that's in plants, but you know why it was hidden for us for 85 years? Because of the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, because they couldn't make money from it. That's the truth. But now that information's out. Why? Because they believe they have so many people socialized in their medical mockingbird idea that when your son or your daughter gets an ear infection, you're going to go and mandate they get an antibiotic instead of doing some things that, you haven't been taught yet about how to take care of an ear infection with no antibiotics. Those are the things that are present in decentralized medicine. Or, one of the classic ones, Meniere's disease, tinnitus, problems with the ear and hearing. These are all exploding now. Why? Because Apple makes things you put right in your ear canal next to your cochlea that destroys the melanin sheets. Most people don't even know they have melanin sheets inside their cochlea. So they wonder why it's going bad. The heavy metal rockers, they were the first ones that got this problem in the 60s and 70s. Their hearing went. Everybody said, oh, it's because the music's so loud. No, it wasn't. It's because the EMF that they had from their electric guitars, from working at night. Got it? That's where it really
makes
from.
That makes sense.
Of course it makes sense. Science always makes sense when it's decentralized. But guess what? Project Mockingbird, who controls the narrative, who controls the NIH funding, they don't let you study this stuff. That's why they canceled Becker. That's why they canceled Bernice Eddy. Bernice Eddy gets canceled so you never learn about SV40. And, people are probably saying, what is SV40? That's where cancer comes from. That's where HIV comes from. Okay? These are manufactured problems that big pharma and the industrial military complex create.
Okay. Is there so that means that there is basically cancer is manufactured and is there a cure for cancer which is also being repressed?
Cancer comes a lot of different ways. So let me explain. I just had this discussion with somebody today. The modern world, this is the most common way. Like I just did the podcast with Danny Jones, but I did another one with another doctor named Mary Talley Bowden. You'll be very interested in the end of this podcast. At the end of the podcast, I show one slide, and it's the spike of cancer in SV40 from the polio vaccine. And I pointed out to Danny and to Mary, I said, look at this huge spike, okay? Look how big it is. Now, look at what happens in 2021 as soon as we give the COVID jab. The slope of the line, almost straight up.
Wow.
So what does that tell you? It tells you that the real problem back in the original ones, this was a mistake they made when they put the whole genome in the jab, in the polio jab. This one, Pfizer just put the SV40 promoter in their jab, and the slope of the line is even worse. So what does that tell you? It tells you that they purified the most toxic part, and now we are going to create huge amounts of disease. My view, I think another 50 to 75 years. And if you look at what Pfizer's doing right now, you'll notice that with all their partners at Harvard, Stanford, and Johns Hopkins, they're coming out with drugs for turbo cancers. Oh, let's create them and let's have a solution to solve it so that idiots, that are not savages will, the jab is good for us. It's the best thing. People don't want to hear the truth. Why? Because it takes them out of their belief paradigm. When they think, like I always tell people, for you to trust your government means you cannot know history well. That's the truth. And you have to realize this is the reason why they have to have control of the media, because the victors write the books. The history books are written by the victors. So the truth is never found in the history books. You have to be very crafty about how you get your information. And that's the reason why I think podcasts like this are important. I think that's the reason why documentary is important. I think alternative media that's not controlled by the Rothschilds and Rockefellers is really important, because that's where the truth will be found. You may have a hard time believing what I'm teaching you, but when you begin to look in and go down the rabbit holes I teach you, you go, holy shit.
Yeah.
It's really
That's happening for me. I'm like, so like I know that I need to be diving into those different topics even more, because a lot of this is new for me. Because I'm at the beginning of this, and it almost sounds like, for example, when I look at ancient civilizations, that their doctors were so much further than ours, because they were in tune with nature, in tune with the sun, and they were actually honoring.
You know what the best example of that is for you? Like, here's the history lesson, and you'll know that I'm axiomatically true about this, and you should look into it. So there's a guy. Well, I'll tell you his name in a minute, but I'll tell you the story. How do we know that the Egyptians knew a lot more than modern medicine? All the people that were the poor people that built the pyramids, they're the healthiest people from that time. The most unhealthy people are the pharaohs. How do we know that? They put the pharaohs in the sarcophagus, and now we've x-rayed them and found out they have all the same diseases we have. Where did those people live? They live inside, outside the sun. Where did we find all the Anubian people that built the pyramids? They were buried on the side of the pyramids and the Sphinx. We pulled their bodies out in 1980, 1990, and 2000. All the skulls went to a guy in Arkansas named Peter Unger. You know what he found? Perfect dentition, beautiful skulls, perfect facial features. But it turns out the pharaohs, all the people buried in a sarcophagus, they look like modern humans. So guess what? What does that tell you? Fire inside when you're in a temple is just as bad as the electric power grid. It turns out light at night is a real problem. Light inside, real problem. Not going in the sun because it's too fucking hot, which is what they didn't do. But the people that were outside, who are totally decentralized, building this unbelievable pyramid, dude, they got their answer right. Right. It's amazing when you think about it. But guess what? Nobody else thinks about it. Like, I'm looking at your face when I'm telling you the story. Now, let me ask you a question. Do we need a history book to figure that out? No.
It's almost like what I said before. I'm not a scientist, but like, I think with a lot of those things, you don't really actually need to understand what it is. You just need to be like, okay, this feels good. I know what it is. And when I'm inside all day, I feel shitty, so yeah.
Oh, that I can tell you, I've just experienced that when I went back to Tampa to do the podcast with Danny. Last 2 days, my circadian rhythm is all jacked up. I didn't feel good at all. Today's the first day I felt better. Yeah. And, the older you get, the worse it is. The younger you are, you can go and party like a rock star 5, 6, 7 days in a row, have fun with your friends, drink this and that. But when you get to be my age, bro, you can't do that shit. Why? Because you're accumulating all these mutations in your mitochondria that doesn't allow you to make the light inside, to make the melanin in you, to create the electric power grid in you so you can do the things you do. Yeah. This is not rocket scientists, bro. This is quantum biology.
I lived in Santa Teresa for 1 month, and there you are like in a jungle. There's nothing happening. And after this, I believe it was Hong Kong, which was like the exact
concrete jungle.
Yes. And this was the first time where, like, I listened to all the podcasts, but this was the first time where I was able to live according to the circadian rhythm for a month and then see how actually fucked up it is to live in a city. And this is
guess what? You didn't need to read a book, did you?
Yeah.
You did what we call field research. See? So you are a scientist. You just didn't know it.
True. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I also tried that. This is maybe interesting because I tried the carnivore diet for 1 month, and I was on it for, I think, in total maybe like 2 to 3 months, and I felt good. But also my body was like, I'm not 100% on the carnivore diet. This is just my personal like field research. So what is your take on that? I know your diet. You say
carnivore diet's a wintertime diet. That's what it is.
Okay.
Meaning that you eat that diet, you're mimicking what the wolves in Yellowstone Park are going through right now. Like they only eat fat and protein. But remember, when you're in a very good light environment like this, right now I have pineapples growing in my front yard. I have coconuts right over here.
Awesome.
So if it's growing here, that means that I can eat it. Okay. And here, things grow differently than they grow at, where I'm from. But here's the interesting thing. Remember the story I told you about the Schumann resonance, which is 7.83 hertz?
Yeah.
That tells you the seasons, tells your brain where the sun is in relation to the moon. And the other thing that the body pays attention to is the angle of inclination of the light that you're in when you're outside. So your body knows what latitude you're at. It figures out what season it is. And then that story, that electromagnetic story, has to marry to the food you eat. So if you eat a carnivore diet and you're in the wrong place, that's a mismatch. So what does a mismatch cause? What's the name we have for it in medicine? It's called inflammation. What is inflammation when you really get down to it? Positive charge. It's a proton. So when you realize that wellness is a collection of net negative charge, what increases the net negative charge in you? Electrons and sunlight. So how do you offset inflammation? Anything in centralized medicine that ends in the word itis, the answer is the sun.
How much does grounding help there?
It's huge. Here, it's really big. But remember, grounding works because you are able to absorb more net negative electrons and also more sunlight when you're grounded. The problem is in most modern cities, because they bury power lines under the ground, it's not safe to ground in those places. In fact, I tell people this story. When 5G first got put into New York City, there were several horses right on Fifth Avenue by Central Park. When they stepped on the manhole cover with their horseshoes, they got electrocuted. There were several people that got shocks from leaning against poles because there's jump conduction. So it's a huge effect in cities. Here, since this is mostly volcanic, grounding here is way better. You make a better connection. So that means you don't need to spend as much time in the sun here as you would probably need to do, say, in France or UK or Denmark. So it's a huge effect. But do I think people who do live in high latitude Europe, do you need to ground? Do you need to embrace the cold? Do you need to be out, doing a real geothermal sauna, not bullshit sauna you buy in the store? Absolutely. You want to be outside. Like the thing I love about Northern Europeans, they have a big history of taking their babies and put them outside when they're little. This is huge for these children doing cold thermogenesis. People in the United States think people from Scandinavia are crazy. They're not. It's the same thing with the Russians. The reason I love the Russians, they go and they jump in the cold water in the river and everybody thinks, oh, this is just crazy Russians. No, this is how modern humans adapted to harsh environments that didn't have sun. But people don't realize this is also a story of mitochondrial biology. And it's the same thing is true when you take sommeliers, put them in Detroit and Toronto, and they go crazy. Or you take people from equatorial Africa and put them in Northern Europe, and they start raping Swedish women. This should be totally expected because of the mechanism I told you in the eye. But everybody says, oh, no, if you say that, you're racist. And, in Europe, it's a problem. Well, I think it's bullshit. Why? Because it's science. It's decentralized science, and you need to know that. And the problem is who set these policies up? The global elitists tied to the Rockefellers and Rothschilds in the World Economic Forum. Anybody who goes to Davos, let me just tell you something. They're the fucking enemy, okay? If you show up in Davos, you're the enemy. If you're affiliated with somebody who's in Davos, you're the enemy.
Yeah. What is, with 5G, is it as dangerous as, how dangerous is it?
Yeah, it's really dangerous for people, and especially when you don't have any melanin. I mean, when your melanin gets taken out, forget it. It's probably more dangerous for Northern European haplotypes than anybody else. Do I think equatorial Africans can tolerate it better? Yes. Now, the real problem is when you move an equatorial African to America and they lose all the melanin on the inside, then they get very unusual diseases.
By 5G, the 5G.
5G, it's anything. 0G to 5G. You may not know this. 2017, the United States government studied 0G, 1G, 2G, and 3G. You know what they found? All mammals, nocturnal mammals, got cancers. Weird cancers. Oh. This is something the government paid for. Everybody buried it's called the NTP toxicity report. You go look at it. The answer's there, bro. Like I told you. Yeah. I get so frustrated.
Gotta look at it.
Right. I get so frustrated with the food gurus and the functional medicine people. They want to tell you, oh, it's the food, it's the exercise. I'm like, you're fucking retarded. Yeah. Like, this cancer is obvious. It's been staring us in the face. But remember, they can't make business by this message. This is the problem. See, this is where Jack is inconvenient for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does it help?
supplements. They like to
Yeah.
say the bullshit story. They do the same thing Big Pharma does, except a little bit different. They don't use the prescription pad. They have all the stuff in their office. The chiropractors, the functional medicine doctors, they're as guilty snake oil salesmen as the people who are pediatricians and internal medicine doctors handing out prescriptions for statins. It's no different to me.
Yeah. I heard that methylene blue also helps to get rid of some of the EMF toxicity. Is this true?
That's not true.
No.
No, that's more bullshit from biohackers on the internet. They just
Okay.
don't know how methylene blue works.
Okay. How does it work?
I don't like telling people how it works because I think that you need to work with a doctor to use it.
Okay.
The story where this became very, very famous is with Rick Rubin. When I told Rick he needed to use it for the surgery that he had to have, he talked to Peter Attia, who's a centralized MD in the United States, who's got this big longevity following. He makes millions of dollars a year by lying to people. He also told people statins and the jab were good, just so you know, but he's a longevity doctor, which to me is the ultimate irony. But he's a friend of Rick's. And then when Rick called me up, I said, when you're on the heart bypass machine, they should give you methylene blue. And he's like, why? I said, it's going to protect the melanin sheets in your ear and inside your brain so that when you're hypoxic, it won't go away. And then we won't erase the master tapes from the best music producer in the world in your brain. And he looked at me. He's like, you're kidding me. To this very day, he still takes methylene blue because he's afraid that that's going to happen. But it's the hypoxia. And does non-native EMF cause hypoxia? The answer is yes. Does it decrease water production? Yes. Does being on a heart-lung machine do that as well? The answer is yes. But you need to know how to use it. And most people on the internet, it's kind of like talking to rejects. They think they know, like they read 17 papers and now they're experts.
Okay. So shouldn't I, like, you can buy it like on the internet, as you say?
You can buy it from an aquarium maker, but no, you shouldn't be using it. But you should find out why people use it in an aquarium. Remember, you don't have to read a book now, my friend.
Yeah.
You said you want to do field research? Yeah, why do we use it in a fish tank? Ask that question, then you go, oh, now I see what Jack's talking about. But the stuff that we use in medicine, it's pharmaceutical grade. And how we use it is very specific. In fact, I've told people this, and Mary Talley Bowden is having a lot of trouble right now with the Texas Medical Board going after her license about ivermectin and some other drugs that she used. I said, well, if she would have known me then, I would have told her about methylene blue, because methylene blue is the precursor chemical for hydroxychloroquine. So when they took hydroxychloroquine away, nobody ever realized that you could use methylene blue and you wouldn't have to worry about COVID at all. You would never go to a hospital and get intubated. But you know what the problem is? That's decentralized magic, not the centralized magic.
Yeah,
that's the big key.
It's kind of
cool
cool
that you have to know. And when you understand that methylene blue is really one of those decentralized stories, that's when you can see me smile.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much with like this bro science, which they say, like, so I have like in my I was fighting, so I had like a professional Muay Thai fight, so I went into like I had a 6-month period where I was training for this fight, and there was this one thing which a lot of like those fighters told me, was basically semen retention, that like by not ejaculating, that you will actually be able to increase your testosterone. And that again, like I was doing this for quite a while, and no, doesn't make sense. Okay, because I would have said the bros placebo.
Yeah, it's something that comes out of, believe it or not, Eastern medicine. That was the idea in Indian medicine and Chinese medicine for a long time. Turns out the more times you have orgasms, the better off you are. In fact, the more times you come, the longer you live. So I tell people, I want you to go out and fuck as much as you can.
Okay.
So I'm the exact opposite.
That's interesting. Anything else for longevity other than coming as much as we can?
Yeah, I would tell you probably the number one thing is seeing the sunrise. Like I always use this at the end of podcasts, make like the Sphinx. Look to the east, all 4 extremities grounded, and then eat a diet that's based on your location, what grows naturally there. If you're going to drink water, try to drink water from high latitudes because it has decreased deuterium. I think make good connections with good people in your life. I think your circle of 6 friends is really important. You want to have 12 other eyes looking at the world so that when the Department of Defense, centralized medicine, the CIA, the NSA, President Obama, I don't know who else we can put in there. Maybe the guy that's running China, they do something wrong that if you don't see it, your friends will, and they'll sit down and have a coffee with you and say, look, you need to think about what you're doing here. Maybe going to talk to this person and that person is not a good idea. Like, for example, and I haven't told them this, I probably should. Costa Rica is becoming a problem for Americans. The reason why is the American military is pulled out of Costa Rica. Now, a lot of the gangs are coming in to Costa Rica, and there's much more crime. All the crime that used to be in other places are now there. So my American friends who have a lot of money who've built, up a nice place in Costa Rica, I think it's time for you to think about a different place. Why? Just like the United States is not the way it used to be, neither is Costa Rica. So you have to have friends to tell you that specific issue. And you may not know that's going on. You may have no idea. And this is why I think your network's important. It's the reason why who packs your parachute, I think, is really a big part, of people's lives. And I believe when we live in a world where data is coming out at ridiculous rates, you have to have a good filter to know what is superfluous and what is, real and what really matters. And unfortunately, I don't believe that a lot of people have that. And I believe that critical thinking is the number one way to do that. So I believe everybody should begin to think from first principles, become a critical thinker, and call bullshit out on everything. Become a skeptic on everything. Trust nobody. Do your due diligence. And when you do that, those are where savages are born. Those are my people. That's my tribe.
That's the way. Let's end it here. Thank you so much, Jack, and stay healthy out there.
No problem. Take care.
Take care. Awesome.